I'm Felix Castellano, 73 years old, a shipping magnate by profession. But to my granddaughter Rosalie, I'm simply Grandpa Felix. The champagne flute exploded against the deck when it fell from my trembling hand, sending crystal shards across the polished teak like scattered dreams. Through the morning mist hovering over the Alaskan waters, I saw my granddaughter Rosalie running toward me, her face twisted with a terror that no 9-year-old should ever wear.
Grandpa Felix! Her scream sliced through the cruise ship's breakfast chatter like a distress signal. You have to leave, right now. Please, Grandpa, they're going to kill you. My 73-year-old knees nearly buckled as she crashed into my arms. The other passengers on the Northern Majesty's observation deck turned to stare. Elderly couples with their morning coffee, families photographing glaciers, honeymooners holding hands. They saw a grandfather comforting a distressed child. They had no idea they were witnessing the moment my entire world imploded. "Rosie, sweetheart, breathe!" I held her tear-stained face in my weathered hands, searching those amber eyes that reminded me so much of my late wife, Dorothy. "Tell me what's wrong." She glanced over her shoulder toward the ship's interior, then whispered words that froze my blood colder than the Alaskan morning. "Daddy and Mom, I heard them in the bathroom. They're going to put something in your wine tonight. They said you'd fall asleep and never wake up." If you've ever felt your heart shatter into pieces too small to count, you understand this moment. But before I tell you how my own son planned my murder, please take a second to subscribe, because what comes next will show you that sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones most eager to spill it. 73 years of life, 48 years building a shipping empire from one rusty boat to a fleet of vessels. I'd weathered storms, both literal and metaphorical, but nothing had prepared me for this. "Rosalie, look at me." I kept my voice steady, though inside I was drowning. "Tell me exactly what you heard, every word." The story poured out between hiccuping sobs. She'd forgotten her sketchpad in their suite and went back while her parents thought she was at the kids' club. Through the bathroom door, she'd heard my son, Garrett, the boy I'd taught to sail, who I'd walked through Harvard Business School, who'd stood beside me at Dorothy's funeral, discussing with his wife Vanessa how they'd dissolve sleeping pills in my nightly port wine, how I'd become confused and need fresh air, how a tragic accident at the stern railing would solve all their problems. "Daddy said you're worth $4 million dead," Rosalie whispered, her small body shaking against mine. "He said you're alive, you're just an expense." I stared out at the Alaskan wilderness passing by, mountains that had stood for millennia, glaciers older than human memory, and felt ancient myself. When had my son started seeing me as a line item on a balance sheet? "She know about the life insurance," she continued, her voice barely audible, "the one you just increased. They said it would look natural because you're old and have that heart thing." The heart thing. Mild arrhythmia, controlled by medication, nothing that would kill me for years yet, unless someone helped it along. "Rosie, Princess," I used the nickname I'd given her the day she was born, when she'd looked like a tiny rose in the hospital blanket. "You did the right thing telling me. You're the bravest person I know." "What are we going to do?" Her voice broke my heart. So small, so frightened, forced to choose between her parents and what was right. I stood slowly, my joints protesting, but my mind sharper than it had been in years. The Alaskan coast stretched endlessly beside us, beautiful and indifferent to human cruelty. "We're going to play a game," I said quietly. "A game where we pretend everything is normal, while I figure out how to keep us both safe." "Both of us?" She looked up with those huge eyes. "But they're my parents. They wouldn't hurt me." I thought about Garrett's desperation, Vanessa's cold calculation, the way they'd use their own daughter's trust as cover for murder. Sometimes, Princess, the most dangerous people are the ones who are supposed to protect us. You might wonder why I didn't run immediately, why I didn't grab Rosalie and escape at the next port. Keep watching, because sometimes the only way to escape a trap is to spring it yourself. And if this story is breaking your heart like it broke mine, please subscribe. Someone you know might need to hear that family isn't always safe. 3 days earlier, Seattle port. The morning we'd boarded the Northern Majesty had been perfect. One of those rare Seattle days when the sun burns through the clouds and makes the Puget Sound sparkle like Dorothy's eyes used to. I'd stood at the boarding gate watching my family approach and felt something I hadn't experienced since losing my wife 18 months ago. Hope. "There's my favorite shipping magnate," Garrett had called out, his voice carrying that salesman's enthusiasm he'd perfected over the years. At 47, he still looked like the golden boy who'd captained his college rowing team, tall, broad-shouldered, with just enough silver in his hair to seem distinguished. Vanessa had glided beside him in her designer travel outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. At 41, she maintained herself like a luxury car, expensive treatments, careful maintenance, always photo-ready. Behind them, Rosalie had dragged her purple suitcase, lost in one of her fantasy novels. "This is too much, Felix," Vanessa had said, eyeing the massive ship with its 18 decks and glass elevators. "The penthouse suite must have cost a fortune." "Nothing's too much for my family," I'd replied, not noticing how her eyes had lingered on my Rolex, calculating its value. "Besides, when else will we see the inside passage together?" Here's the cruelest part about Betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It smiles at you over breakfast, hugs you goodnight, tells you it loves you while sharpening the knife. If you're still reading this, if you need to know how a father becomes a monster, please hit that subscribe button, because understanding evil is the first step to surviving it. That first evening at sea, we dined in the ship's Michelin-starred restaurant. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Pacific Northwest coastline while a jazz trio played Dorothy's favorite songs. I'd been telling Rosalie about the Tlingit peoples who'd fished these waters for thousands of years when I'd caught Garrett and Vanessa exchanging one of their looks, the kind married couples develop, full of meaning invisible to outsiders. "Dad, we need to talk about the future," Garrett had said suddenly, interrupting my story. "What about it?" "You're 73. The company needs stable leadership. Maybe it's time to start transitioning control." "I'm perfectly healthy, son." "But for how long?" Vanessa had leaned forward, her voice honeyed concern. "We just want to be prepared, for Rosalie's sake." Always for Rosalie's sake. They wielded their daughter like a weapon, knowing I'd do anything for her. "The company will be yours when I'm gone," I'd said firmly, "but I'm not going anywhere yet." Garrett's jaw had tightened, that same expression he'd worn as a boy when told he couldn't have something immediately. "The board is asking questions, Dad, about succession planning, about your ability to—" "The board I built from nothing?" I set down my wine glass harder than necessary. "The company I created while you were still in diapers? That was 40 years ago, and I'm still capable of running it." The tension had been thick enough to cut. Rosalie had shrunk in her chair, eyes darting between us. That's when I'd noticed she'd stopped eating, stopped reading, stopped being a child. She'd become a witness to adult ugliness. Do you see it now? The moment love becomes resentment? When support becomes expectation? If you have parents, if you have children, if you've ever wondered when family stops being family, keep watching. And please share this story. Someone needs to know they're not alone in facing family monsters. The second day at sea, while Rosalie was at the youth program learning about marine biology, I'd overheard Vanessa on the phone. She'd been standing on their suite's balcony, not realizing sound carries over water. She was saying $4 million in life insurance alone, plus the company, the properties, the investment portfolio. We're talking about generational wealth, Marcus. Marcus. Her personal trainer, I'd later learned. The one she'd been seeing while Garrett worked late at the firm I'd handed him. No, he won't just give it to us. The old fool wants to die with his boots on like this is some Western movie. I know, baby. Just a few more days. Garrett has a plan. That evening, they'd insisted on drinks in the cocktail lounge. Garrett had been unusually animated, almost manic in his insistence that I try the special aged whiskey. Come on, Dad. When's the next time we'll toast together in Alaska? But I'd seen Vanessa palm something near my glass when she thought I was distracted by Rosalie's arrival. A small white pill that dissolved quickly in amber liquid. Actually, I'm taking new medication. Can't mix it with alcohol. The flash of frustration on both their faces was telling. They'd been testing me, seeing how easy I'd be to drug.
After Rosalie's warning on that fourth morning, I'd sent her back to the kids' club with strict instructions to stay visible, stay around others, stay safe. Then I'd done something I hadn't done since my Navy days 50 years ago. I'd gone into battle mode. The ship's security office was hidden behind an unmarked door on Deck 4. The head of security, Commander Bridger, was a former Marine with eyes that had seen humanity's worst. "Mr. Castellano," she'd said when I'd knocked, "how can I help you?" "Commander, I need to report an attempted murder. The intended victim is me. The suspects are my son and daughter-in-law." She'd listened without interrupting as I'd laid out everything. Rosalie's warning, the overheard calls, the attempted drugging. Her expression had grown progressively darker. "Sir, these are serious allegations. You're saying your own family?" "I'm saying my son values my money more than my life, and I need your help to prove it before they succeed." This is where the story turns from heartbreak to horror. When you realize that sometimes survival means war against the people you love most. If you're still with me, if you need to know how this ends, please subscribe now. Because what happens next will show you that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to destroy everything you built. Commander Bridger had pulled up the ship's deck plans on her computer. "Show me where they're planning this." "According to my granddaughter, the stern observation deck, after midnight when the patrols are lightest." "That area has a camera blind spot," she'd admitted. "We've been meaning to fix it." "Don't. Let them think they're invisible." She'd studied me with professional assessment. "You want to catch them in the act." "I want this to end, Commander, one way or another." We'd spent 2 hours planning. Hidden cameras would be installed, security would be positioned, I would play the victim while they played predator, and we'd see who was better at their role. That afternoon, I'd found Garrett alone in the ship's library, pretending to read a business journal while actually scrolling through real estate listings on his phone. $1 million homes in Aspen, yachts in the Mediterranean, spending his inheritance before he'd earned it. "Planning your future?" I'd asked, sitting across from him. He darkened his screen quickly. "Just browsing. You know how it is." "I know exactly how it is." I'd leaned back, studying this stranger wearing my son's face. "Tell me, Garrett, when did you start hating me?" "I don't hate you, Dad." "No? Then what do you call it when a son can't wait for his father to die?" His mask had slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw and ugly underneath. "You want the truth? You've been dying for years, Dad, ever since Mom passed. You just refused to admit it. So you thought you'd help me along. I don't know what you're talking about, don't you?" I'd stood, looking down at him. "Your mother would be ashamed of what you've become. Mom's dead, and you should have followed her by now. Instead, you're clinging to life in that company like you'll live forever." There it was, the truth, naked and hideous. "Some of you might judge me for what comes next. Some might say I should have walked away. called the police, ended it there. But when your own blood turns poisonous, sometimes you have to let it flow to see how deep the infection goes. Subscribe if you understand that sometimes love means letting someone reveal their true nature, even when it destroys you to watch. That evening, Vanessa had approached me alone near the pool deck. The sunset had painted the Alaskan mountains gold and crimson. Beautiful backdrop for an ugly conversation. "Felix, we need to discuss Rosalie's future." "What about it?" "We're just being practical. You're not young, and you're wondering if my death would be more profitable with or without your daughter in the picture." Her face had flushed with anger. "How dare you? How dare you what? Notice that you're planning my murder?" "Yes, Vanessa, I know everything." She'd gone very still, like a predator deciding whether to fight or flee. "You're paranoid, senile. Maybe we should have you evaluated." "Try it." I'd stepped closer, close enough to see the calculation in her eyes. "But know this, I've changed my will. If anything happens to me under suspicious circumstances, everything goes to charity. Every penny." The lie had come easily. I hadn't changed anything yet, but she didn't need to know that. "You wouldn't dare!" "Wouldn't I? You're planning to kill me, Vanessa. Did you really think I'd make it profitable for you?" She'd stormed off, her heels clicking against the deck like a countdown to disaster.
That night, I'd sat in my penthouse suite writing 2 letters. The first was to Rosalie, telling her how brave she was, how proud I was, how much I loved her. The second was to my lawyer, detailing everything that had happened, to be opened if I didn't return from this cruise. At 11:45 p.m., I'd made my way to the stern observation deck. The area was deserted, lit only by emergency lighting and stars. The ocean stretched black and infinite below, ready to swallow secrets and bodies alike. Commander Bridger's voice had crackled through the tiny earpiece she'd given me. "We're in position, Mr. Castellano. 2 officers in the lifeboat alcove, 2 more, 1 deck up. Just say the word if you need us." I'd stood at the railing, hands clasped behind my back, playing the role of an old man lost in thought. The trap was set. Now I just needed my prey to take the bait. At 12:03 a.m., I heard footsteps. "Dad?" Garrett's voice had floated through the darkness, carefully concerned. "What are you doing out here?" I turned slowly, unsurprised to see both of them approaching. They dressed in dark clothing, Garrett in black jeans and a navy jacket, Vanessa in dark athletic wear that would be easy to move in, easy to clean. "Couldn't sleep," I said simply. "The older I get, the less rest I need." "That's not healthy," Vanessa had said, moving to block my path to the door. "A man your age needs proper rest." "A man my age needs to be careful about a lot of things, like who he trusts." This is it, dear readers, the moment when masks fall and monsters emerge. If you've ever wondered how far someone would go for money, if you've ever questioned whether blood means loyalty, keep watching. But first, please subscribe, because stories like this need witnesses, need to be remembered, need to prevent the next tragedy. "You've been acting strange lately, Dad, paranoid. Maybe we should talk to the ship's doctor about your mental state." "My mental state is fine, son. It's my family that's sick." They exchanged glances, quick, meaningful, decisive. "You know what?" Garrett grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "You're right, this family is sick, sick of waiting for you to die." "Garrett," Vanessa had warned him, but he'd been beyond caring. "No, let him hear it." His face was inches from mine, breath hot with anger and alcohol. 47 years I've been your son. 47 years of never being good enough, never being smart enough, never being you. Well, guess what, Dad? I don't want to be you. I just want what you have." He started pushing me backward toward the railing. Vanessa had moved to help me, her hands on my other arm. "This is how it happens," Garrett had hissed. "Old man, confused, maybe had too much to drink, leans too far over the railing to look at the stars. Tragic accident. We'll cry at your funeral. Comfort each other with your millions." "What about Rosalie?" I asked, even as the railing had pressed against my back. "What about her?" Vanessa had laughed, cold and sharp. "She's 9. She'll forget. Kids are resilient." That's when I'd said the code word. Dorothy. The deck had exploded with light and movement. Security officers had materialized from the shadows, flashlights blazing, weapons drawn. "Step away from Mr. Castellano immediately." Garrett had released me so fast I almost fell. Vanessa had tried to run, but found her path blocked by Commander Bridger herself. "Garrett and Vanessa Castellano, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and assault." As the handcuffs had clicked around my son's wrists, he looked at me with pure hatred. "You set us up. You used Rosalie to set us up." "No, son. Rosalie saved me." A 9-year-old had more courage and morality than both her parents combined. Sometimes, the people we trust most become the ones we should fear most. If this betrayal resonates with you, if you understand the pain of family becoming enemy, please subscribe and share. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone in choosing survival over blood.
The ship's brig was a small, sterile room that smelled of industrial disinfectant and despair. Garrett and Vanessa sat on opposite benches, no longer the golden couple, but two criminals facing the consequences of their greed. "I want to speak with them," I told Commander Bridger. "Alone." "Sir, that's not advisable." "Please, they're restrained. What can they do to me now that they haven't already done?" She'd nodded reluctantly, stationing herself just outside the door. I'd sat on the single chair, looking at these strangers who shared my DNA, my name, my history. "Was any of it real?" I asked quietly. "The family dinners, the holidays, the memories, was any of it genuine?" Vanessa had laughed bitterly. "You want the truth, Felix? The truth is, you've been a checkbook to us for years, nothing more." "When?" I needed to know. "When did I stop being your father and become your victim?" Garrett had finally looked at me, really looked at me. "When Mom died, you got everything. Her family money, the inheritance from her father, all of it. We got nothing." "You got nothing? I paid for your education, your wedding, your house." "Crumbs," he'd shouted. "Crumbs from your table while you sat on millions. Money I earned. Money I built through decades of work. Money you hoarded while we struggled." "Struggled?" I'd stood, pacing the small room. "You drive a Tesla. Vanessa wears designer clothes. Rosalie goes to private school I pay for. What struggle?" "The struggle of never being enough." Garrett's voice had cracked. "Do you know what it's like being Felix Castellano's son? The great entrepreneur, the self-made millionaire? Everything I did was compared to you. Every achievement was measured against your success." For a moment, I'd seen the hurt child inside the murderous man, but only for a moment. "So you decided to kill me?" "We decided to accelerate our inheritance," Vanessa had said coldly. "It's business, Felix. You of all people should understand that." This is where hearts break, friends. When you realize that sometimes people are exactly who they show themselves to be. If you're crying, if you're angry, if you need to process this betrayal with us, please subscribe. Your engagement helps others find these stories, helps them know they're not alone in facing family darkness. What about Rosalie, your daughter, who loves you despite everything? "She'll be fine," Vanessa had said dismissively. "Children adapt." "She heard you planning to murder her grandfather. How does a child adapt to that?" Neither had answered. Commander Bridger had knocked. "Mr. Castellano, we're approaching Juneau. Local authorities will meet us at the dock." "Wait. I made a decision that would haunt me forever. What are the alternatives to prosecution?" Bridger looked surprised. "Sir, they tried to kill you." "They're also Rosalie's parents. What happens to her if they go to prison?" "Foster care, most likely, unless you petition for custody." I thought about Rosalie, sleeping in my suite, unaware her world was about to shatter completely. If I don't press charges, what happens? Ship's ban, lifetime, restraining order once we dock, but sir, they attempted murder. They attempted it, but failed. I turned to Garrett and Vanessa. "Here's my offer. One time only. Sign over full custody of Rosalie tonight. Never contact her or me again. Disappear completely from our lives." "And if we refuse?" Garrett asked. "Then you go to federal prison for attempted murder on the high seas. 15 to 20 years, Rosalie grows up visiting you through glass." The silence stretched like a taut wire. "We'll sign," Vanessa said immediately. "Vanessa!" Garrett turned on her. "It's over, Garrett. We lost. At least this way we stay free."
The custody papers had been drawn up in the ship's business center at 3 a.m. Garrett and Vanessa had signed without reading them, eager to escape the consequences of their choices. Commander Bridger and the ship's captain had served as witnesses. "What do we tell Rosalie?" Garrett had asked as he'd handed back the pen, a flicker of something, maybe regret, crossing his face. "Nothing. You tell her nothing because you'll never see her again. She's our daughter. Was. She was your daughter. Now she's my granddaughter, and I'll protect her from you for the rest of my life." They'd been escorted to their suite to pack, scheduled for removal at Juneau before Rosalie woke. As they'd left, Garrett had turned back one last time. "You know what the saddest part is, Dad? If you just died naturally, we would have mourned you. We would have remembered the good times. Now all I'll remember is how you took everything from us." "I took nothing. You threw it away the moment you decided my death was worth more than my life." The hardest truth about family betrayal is that it forces us to mourn the living. We grieve not for who they are, but for who we thought they were. If you understand this pain, if you've had to choose between toxic family and self-preservation, please subscribe. Share this story with someone who needs to know that walking away from family isn't failure. It's survival. Back in my suite, I'd found Rosalie asleep on the sofa, her sketchbook open beside her. She'd been drawing, a picture of the three of us standing on the deck, watching whales. The grandfather, the granddaughter, and notably missing, her parents. Even in her art, she'd already begun erasing them. When she'd woken at sunrise, the first thing she'd asked was, "Are they gone?" "Yes, Princess, they're gone." "Forever?" "Forever." She'd been quiet for a long moment, processing this with the devastating wisdom children possess when forced to grow up too fast. "They were going to hurt you for money." "Yes." "That's evil." "Yes, it is." "But I stopped them. I saved you." "You did, sweetheart. You're my hero." She'd climbed into my lap, something she hadn't done in 2 years, and we'd watched Juneau's mountains emerge from the morning mist. "Grandfather Felix?" "Yes, Princess?" "What happens to me now?" "Now you live with me. We'll get a house near your school. I'll learn to make your favorite pancakes. We'll read stories and paint pictures and make new memories, better memories." "What if you die?" The question was practical, not cruel, a child trying to map her future. "I know I'm not going anywhere for a long time." "How do you know?" "Because now I have something worth living for, someone worth protecting." She nodded, then asked the question that broke my heart. Did they ever love me? How do you answer that? How do you tell a 9-year-old that her parents valued money more than her life? I think, I said carefully, they loved you the only way they knew how. But sometimes people's love is broken. It comes with conditions and price tags. That's not your fault, Princess. That's their failure, not yours.
We'd stood at Juneau's dock, watching Garrett and Vanessa being escorted off the ship by security. They hadn't looked back. No wave goodbye to their daughter, no final glance at the father they'd tried to murder. They'd simply walked into a taxi and disappeared from our lives. "Are you sad?" Rosalie had asked, holding my hand. "Yes," I'd admitted. "I'm sad for who they could have been, for the family we could have had." "But we have each other." "Yes, Princess, we have each other." The remaining 3 days of the cruise had been magical. Without the shadow of Garrett and Vanessa's greed, Rosalie had blossomed. We'd watched glaciers calving, whales breaching, eagles soaring. She'd made friends in the kids' club, won the ship's art contest, and laughed for the first time since Dorothy's death. On our last night, we'd stood on the deck where her parents had tried to kill me, reclaiming the space with better memories. "Grandpa, can I tell you a secret?" "Always." "I knew they were bad before. They fought about money all the time. They said mean things about you when they thought I wasn't listening. They called you old and stubborn and said everything would be easier when you were gone." My throat had tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because they're my parents. I thought I had to love them no matter what." I knelt down to her level, my knees protesting, and taken her small face in my hands. "Rosalie, listen to me. Love isn't supposed to hurt. Real love doesn't come with conditions or price tags. If someone makes you feel unsafe or unloved, that's not your fault. You don't owe anyone your suffering, not even family." This is the lesson, dear viewers. This is what we learn when blood becomes poison, that family isn't about DNA, it's about choice. If you've had to choose yourself over toxic family, if you've had to save yourself from the people who should have protected you, you're not alone. Please subscribe, share this story, let others know that choosing safety over family isn't betrayal, it's wisdom. She'd nodded solemnly. "Is that why you sent them away? Because they didn't really love us?" "I sent them away because they were dangerous, but also because you deserve better. We both do." The cruise had ended where it began, in Seattle's port, but everything had changed. I'd boarded with a son, a daughter-in-law, and a granddaughter. I was leaving just Rosalie, but somehow we were more complete as two than we ever had been as four. "Grandpa Felix?" "Yes, Princess?" "Can I call you Dad?" The question had stopped my heart. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because that's what you are now. You're the one who chose me. You're the one who stayed. You're the one who keeps me safe." "Then yes," I said through tears. "Yes, you can call me Dad."
The morning sun streams through the windows of our new house in Bellingham, Washington, close enough to Seattle for my business, far enough from memories that hurt. Rosalie sits at the kitchen table, working on her homework while I attempt to make pancakes that don't look like maps of unknown continents. "Dad, you're burning them again," she says without looking up, and my heart still skips when she calls me that. 6 months have passed since the cruise. Garrett and Vanessa vanished to somewhere in California. I heard through lawyers that they're divorcing, each blaming the other for their failed murder plot. They send no letters, make no calls, honor the agreement that bought their freedom. Sometimes I wonder if they think about Rosalie, if they regret choosing money over their daughter. But then I see her thriving. Straight A's, new friends, art classes where she paints landscapes without shadows, and I know we made the right choice. "Tell me about Grandma Dorothy," she says suddenly, closing her textbook. "What do you want to know?" "Would she have been sad about Mom and Dad?" I flip a pancake, considering. "She would have been sad that they lost their way, but she would have been proud of you for being brave. And she would have been proud of me for protecting you." "Do you think they'll ever come back?" "No, Princess. That part of our life is over." "Good." She says it simply, without malice. "We're better without them." And there it is, the truth that takes so long to learn. That sometimes losing toxic people isn't a loss at all. It's freedom. If you've made it this far in our story, if you've stayed with us through the pain and betrayal and ultimate redemption, thank you. Please subscribe to hear more stories of survival, of choosing yourself over toxic family, of finding light after the darkness. Last week, I took Rosalie to Dorothy's grave. We brought yellow roses, Dorothy's favorites, and Rosalie told her grandmother about school, about her art, about our new life. "I wish I could have met her," Rosalie said. "You did meet her, Princess, when you were a baby. She held you for hours, said you were the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen." "Tell me what else she said." "She said you were going to do great things, that you had a warrior's heart in a poet's soul." "Is that why I was brave on the ship, because of Grandma's warrior heart?" "Maybe, or maybe you're just naturally brave. Either way, you saved my life." We stand there in the cemetery, an old man and a young girl, both orphaned by greed, but found by love. The sun sets behind us, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Rosalie's colors, Dorothy's colors, the colors of our new beginning. "Dad," Rosalie takes my hand. "I love you. I love you too, Princess, forever and always. No matter what? No matter what." As we walk back to the car, I think about Garrett and Vanessa somewhere living their separate lives, free but empty. They chose money over meaning, freedom over family, themselves over their daughter. They'll never know what they lost, not just the inheritance they killed for, but the love of a remarkable little girl who would have adored them if they'd let her. The irony isn't lost on me. They wanted my money so badly they were willing to kill for it. But in trying to take everything, they lost the only thing that actually mattered: Rosalie. I'm 73 years old. My body aches more each morning. My memory sometimes slips, and I know my years are numbered. But every day when Rosalie comes home from school, when she shows me her artwork, when she falls asleep reading on the couch and I cover her with Dorothy's quilt, I know that some things are worth more than money, more than blood, more than life. Love, real love, is choosing someone's safety over your comfort. It's standing between them and danger, even when danger wears familiar faces. It's teaching a little girl that she's worthy of protection, of loyalty, of fierce and unconditional love. The scars of betrayal never fully fade. They remain as reminders, not of our weakness, but of our strength, not of what we lost, but of what we saved. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about your own family, your own choices, please subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear that family isn't always safe, but survival is always possible. And remember, you deserve to be loved without conditions, valued without price tags, and protected without question. Sometimes, The family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into. Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. From all of us at Scars of Betrayal, hold tight to those who truly love you. The rest, let them go. Let them go and never look back. Thank you for experiencing When Blood Turns to Poison. If this story spoke to your soul, please subscribe to Scars of Betrayal. Every subscription helps someone else find these stories, helps them know they're not alone in choosing safety over blood. Until next time, remember, the strongest families are built on choice, not chance.